5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been amazed to know how much money has actually been spent in some of these previous relocations. Reassignments that nearing $200,000 per relocation. Have you directed any of these reassignments during your tenure?
I have not, no, sir.
And Mr. Brainerd reported that the relocation expenses for his reassignment to Maine exceeded $100,000. Is that true, as far as you know?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay, and would you agree that that's an illegitimate use of taxpayers' dollars?
It's in excess of what should have been spent. In fact, I've capped any relocation reassignment costs.
How are involuntary relocation decisions approved now?
Now the process is first and foremost, it has to be looked at by the Office of Human Capital. I want them to see, is there a need for the relocation? Second, has the individual that they're thinking about relocating, is that something the individual desires, wants? What's the skill set that you need? Why would you do that? Second, I have to have a CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, has to sign off on the ability to actually pay for it, and it has to be within a reasonable cost, and then when we've set limits on those reasonable costs. And then finally, after it gets reviewed by my executive council, we make the final decision in the Office of the Administrator.
Administrator Neffinger, it sounds like that you are trying to develop or implement a plan for the future, which is part of it cleaning up from some of the things in the past. Probably the biggest thing that concerns me is the issue with Mr. Hogan. Do you believe that Mr. Hogan's performance bonuses of $90,000 is justified for the taxpayer?
I don't think that level of bonus was justified, period.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. As the leader of the OSO, didn't Mr. Hogan have a key role in directed reassignments?
He had a role in directed reassignments. It wasn't the only role in directed reassignments. Those came out of a different office.
When you said a role, can you expound just for a moment for me?
Well, I mean, moving the Office of Security Operations ultimately has to get the people moved from one location to the other, and perhaps has to carry out the order to make the movement happen.
Is it fair to say that he had a key factor in this?
I think he had a role in this. Yes.
Okay. All right. In looking at that, in his situation and his involvement, I'm sure you've considered replacing Mr. Hogan as the director of OSO, given his responsibility for screening failures, role in directed reassignments, and his questionable bonus payments. Is that fair to say?
I'd like to back up a little bit, Mr. Walker, and talk about. I
appreciate that, but I want you to answer the question. You're welcome to expound, but I asked a direct question there.
My first task was to see what my leadership team was able to do, and everything I've asked of Mr. Hogan since I've been here, he has done that. I look at all of my leaders and determine whether or not they're suitable for the job.
I appreciate it, but there's been some past violations. Have you had discussions as they're part of groups that said, listen, this is a decision that we may need to make as far as removing Hogan for these past transgressions?
Well, the Inspector General took a look at the situation with respect to that. I think that there were people responsible for that who were
not asking them, with all due respect, and I know you're doing a great job of what, and for Inspector General Roth, I'm asking about you. What has your role been in Mr. Hogan's previous indiscretions here when it comes to some of the spending expenditures? Have you had discussions, or is there any plan to remove him or put him on probation? What's the decision here?
I do not currently have a plan to remove Mr. Hogan. He has performed to my expectations since I've been there, and I have not seen any indiscretions on his part in the time that I've been in TSA.
So even though we acknowledge there's been some, do we just kind of put a
well, I don't know. I don't acknowledge that he had indiscretions. I think he carried out some orders, and those orders resulted in people being reassigned, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes maybe for ill-considered reasons.
But even carrying out orders, it reminds me of the movie A Few Good Men. These young Marines were still, in the fictitious movie, there for carrying out the Code Red. If he's following orders but still doing something wrong or going after people, there's still some accountability. Is that not fair?
Well, and I think that some of those issues have been investigated, and they were recommended. We've filled out those recommendations as necessary from the Inspector General. I have not seen any direct misconduct on the part of Mr. Hogan in the time that I've been there.
Well, no, and I appreciate that at the time that you've been there. Our concern with the facts that we have is before you arrived, and it was not so far distant past, that there were some of these indiscretions as we've used going on. My time is expiring. I do hope that there will be some kind of looking into Mr. Hogan as far as some of these things that went on, especially these involuntary relocations. Mr. Cummings talked about even potentially tearing some of the families apart, because I do think there is some responsibility on his part, even if he was carrying out orders. I've got 10 seconds left. I do want to compliment Inspector General Roth. Every hearing I go to, you and your staff are properly prepared, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And with that